It's The Log. I'm Charles Purcell. So far, no monolith sighting in my neighborhood, River West, the greatest neighborhood in the world. You've been following this story? I have not, actually. I just saw a couple headlines, heard a little blurb on the radio. This sort of monolith thing, this metal structure, showed up for no apparent reason. It's a good little story. I like these things. Well, there's two of them now. Some remote area in Romania. Reading from NPR now. Less than 2 weeks after authorities stumbled across a mysterious metal object standing freely in the Utah desert, and just days after it disappeared. So, yeah, it appeared mysteriously, and then it disappeared. A similar monolith has been reported nearly halfway around the world. Residents in the Romanian city of Piatra Neamț say they have found another odd item that could have been ripped from the set of 2001: A Space Odyssey. By the way, let me take this opportunity to admit that I have no idea what any of that meant in 2001: A Space Odyssey. I didn't get it. I have since read the explanations, and I still don't get it. I have a selective mind and brain. I think I'm well suited for certain things, to understand them, to analyze them. And then there are certain areas where I'm just not firing. I just don't get it. I never understood A Space Odyssey. I didn't know what it meant. All the imagery, it's, at the end of the movie, I don't know what's going on. I don't know. I don't know what the beginning meant. With the monolith and the apes, and you can explain it to me. Go ahead. You can explain it to me. You can spend an hour explaining it to me. I still won't get it. I don't know. Part of my brain just doesn't work. But I'll tell you the part of my brain that does work. The part of the brain that appreciates this story. It just makes me happy. The local newspaper reports that the monolith, like the one discovered in Utah, is about 10 to 12 feet tall and apparently composed entirely of a dimly reflective metal. It was reportedly found standing on the Batka Domni Plateau near an archaeological site overlooking the city. Journal FM, a local radio station, recorded video of the purported object, revealing an eye-aching sheen and looped markings along its surface. Andrei Carabellia, mayor of Piatra Neamț, appears to be taking the news in stride. There is no reason to panic for those who think there is still life in the universe, Carabellia quipped, according to a translation by The Independent. The statement was posted to Facebook after the discovery surfaced Friday. My guess is that some alien, cheeky, and terrible teenagers left home with their parents' UFO and started planting metal monoliths around the world, first in Utah and then at Piatra Neamț. I am honored that they chose our city. The monolith in Utah disappeared less than 10 days after officers from the state's Department of Public Safety first spotted it. Authorities professed their utter confusion at its presence in Utah's Red Rock country. They were no less confused by its sudden disappearance overnight Friday. An adventure photographer said that he spotted 4 men dismantling the structure, according to the New York Times. Oh, I don't want to hear that. Spoiler. I'm going to assume that's fake news. All that was left of the structure Saturday morning was a triangular metal piece that used to be on top and a hole where the base of the tower stood, according to the Salt Lake Tribune. The Bureau of Land Management denied moving the structure. As for the monolith in Romania, Carabellia said that while he had no answers himself, he would not be upset if the newfound mystery happened to attract tourists to his city. Beyond the conspiracy theories that can be tempting, he added, I'd like to see this randomness as further proof that our city is special for the Earthlings, and maybe not only. All right. I do. I appreciate that. And it's talking about how brains work and don't work, and things we appreciate and things we don't. That's how I judge other people. If you and I were to sit down randomly and have a conversation about this, and you found it was whimsical and delightful, we'd get along great. If you were cynical about it and wanted to just find reasons and find answers about this, I'd think less of you, and we wouldn't get along, probably. We're not a match. If you find absolutely no humor in this, and no whimsy and no delight, I'd never vote for you. See, this is also how I judge candidates. If you find this somehow annoying, or if you're cynical about it, or if you don't care about it at all, if you just bah humbug this thing, I think that speaks to your character, and you're not getting my vote. Yeah, there are a couple of political figures out there who just been blackballed by me. Colin Powell was one of them. Back in the 90s, when there was this whole flack about gays in the military, and Colin Powell was against it, and he used the same argument that people used back in the 40s about black folks and white folks serving together in the military. He said, well, of course everyone deserves equal rights, now speaking about the LGBTQ issue, but it would be bad for morale. It would make some soldiers uncomfortable. Well, that's exactly what they said. That's exactly what they said in the 40s, when there was a bogus debate about black and white soldiers serving together. Might be bad for morale. That's just stupid. And I thought, if you can be that dumb, if you can be, and I bring this up in this context of the much less serious issue of the monolith and understanding humor, things like that. I bring it up in this context because it's not that Colin Powell was being a bigot. It was that he was being profoundly stupid and tin-eared. The fact that he would even entertain that argument was ridiculous. The fact that he was completely unaware that it was the exact same argument used against black military personnel in the 40s just absolutely disqualified him forever for me. I would never think well of him again. I would never vote for him because you can't be that dumb. Now, I've already freely admitted that I do not understand 2001: A Space Odyssey. I'm dumb. Okay? I'm dumb about some things. I'm smart about other things. And that goes for everybody. So Colin Powell is dumb about some things, and I'm sure he's very smart about other things. A lot of people love Colin Powell. He's this very popular and experienced and accomplished person who's quite competent and quite capable on a multitude of abilities. But that one flaw, that shortcoming, took him out of the game forever for me. I'll give you another example. I think you and I maybe have spoken about this before. I'm not a fan of John Kerry at all. At all. Who's just been named as the first climate change czar under the new Biden administration. Which, by the way, I got to say is great in the sense that the position now exists. We should have had this for the last 30 years, but, better late than never, right? Yeah, we have, I forget what the exact title is, but basically he is the climate change czar. But John Kerry had a moment like that disqualified him forever for me. Another one of these small, dim-witted moments that I think, okay, you're just not working. You're not firing properly. It was during the presidential debates, and it was also during the World Series. Now, forgive me because I don't remember all the details. But, it was a big game, and the night before this debate, there was a game in the World Series where a pitcher was struggling, and the manager kept him in the game. And he was just getting hit all over the park. Runs are scoring left and right. And everybody around the country, everybody watching this game, the announcers in the booth, everybody's saying, why is this pitcher still in? Manager, take him out. What are you doing? And it was the big topic of conversation all the next day. So now we get to that evening's debate. And the moderator, again, I wish I remembered details that would make my story better. The moderator asks John Kerry, says, "Oh, everybody across the nation is talking about the game last night and how the manager kept the pitcher in even though he was struggling so mightily. What would you have done in that situation?" Now, here's where John Kerry lost me forever. He gave this inane answer about, "Oh, yeah, I was watching the game too. I couldn't believe he kept him in." And he kept the answer strictly on baseball. When it was clear to me, anyway, and I think clear to anybody with a properly working brain, that what the moderator was asking was about your style of leadership. How much do you delegate? When someone under you is in charge and everything is getting screwed up, how much responsibility do you take? How long of a leash do you have? To me, it was clear what he was asking. And John Kerry never picked up on that. Never did. This is in the middle of a presidential debate. Why do you suppose the moderator would ask you that question? You think he just wants to talk baseball for 5 minutes? In the middle of a damn presidential debate? Use your head, man. John Kerry lost me forever in that moment. So, no, I will never, ever respect you. You might be a nice enough guy. I don't know. But your brain doesn't work right. Yeah, for me, we talk a lot of politics on this program. The people I respect have functional brains. And that means that they appreciate a good joke. They understand humor. These are qualities that, for me, are deal breakers. It's one of the reasons I'm okay with Joe. He's about as far away from me on the spectrum as a person can get. I mean, there are further spaces on the spectrum, but you and I have talked about this a lot. I consider them off the cliff. They're not part of I'm talking about the acceptable political spectrum. I don't want everybody to agree with me. We should have a spectrum of political philosophies. That's fine. And then we should have a democracy where those ideas battle it out. That's also fine. In fact, that's exactly the way it ought to work. And Joe and I are on different ends of the spectrum. But I like him because his brain seems to work properly. He's got a certain amount of smarts. He's got a certain amount of sensitivity. He's got a certain amount of humor. And I'll bet when he heard this monolith story that he chuckled a little bit too. There's plenty of room. There's plenty of room for disagreements and debates. Just can we all be reasonable, pleasant people? Instead of the psychopaths we've got in positions of power? Oh my God, the Orange Menace and Mitch McConnell. If there's any cosmic justice in this world, just have to go down in history as unadulterated psychopaths. McConnell just did it again. The get-along caucus in Congress. People like Manchin and Murkowski and these jokers. Well, they came up with a bipartisan $908 billion COVID package. Now, way back 100 years ago, Pelosi and the House came up with a $3 trillion bill that would have been fantastic. And the Republicans said, no, that's not going to happen. And they were looking more in the neighborhood of $1 trillion. And since then, there have been some compromises, back and forth. But never really a path to passage because mostly McConnell was standing in the way. I mean, even the Orange Menace and Mark Meadows, his chief of staff, and Stephen Mnuchin, his Treasury Secretary, those were the players along with Pelosi. They came close several times, but it never had a chance over these many, many months because of Mitch McConnell. And no, not the Senate Republicans, Mitch McConnell specifically. One person, one turtle man from a little southern state who's got all the power. He holds all the cards. I don't know. We gotta just, this is why it always, all these problems, they get back to reforming the system. Why one person should have all this power is crazy in the first place, but now we got a psychopath in that position. So now this bipartisan group comes up with a $900 billion targeted coronavirus package, and he's just refusing to do it. Unemployment benefits run out the day after Christmas. Merry Christmas, everybody. I don't have to tell you about the miles-long lines of people lining up for free groceries. Businesses large and small are closing, some of them probably forever, poverty skyrocketing, and people continuing to contract the virus and die at record rates. Hospitals at or above capacity. It's impossible to overstate the trouble we're in, and one person refuses to do anything about it. In every great moment of history, there's an aftermath, there's a reckoning, there's a post-mortem. What the hell just happened? And what can we do to avoid it in the future? And there'll be lots of back and forth about how can we prevent people like Mitch McConnell and the Orange Menace from happening again and having all this power. And there'll be all sorts of solutions around the edges. It's like baby-proofing a house. Oh, you put those little rubber corners on cupboard doors and the little locks and the little gates. Yeah, I suppose you can baby-proof a house. They put tamper-proof bottle caps on prescription bottles, warning labels on laundry detergent pods. Yeah, you can try to dummy-proof, stupid-proof. But we got a big job here. We have to psychopath-proof our government, our democracy, against the likes of these guys we thought we'd never see. We just never anticipated it. And I don't blame anybody for that. Who would anticipate someone like the Orange Menace or someone like Mitch McConnell? In your wildest dreams, you don't anticipate that. The founders certainly didn't anticipate these guys. Yeah, we got to get right down to the root of how to make democracy work again. And there's too much wrong right now to piddle with this. We got to go deep to the core. We can't be legislating around the edges. We can't be trying to baby-proof or foolproof or dummy-proof or psychopath-proof through a series or a package of a bunch of bills. No, we got to go deep. We got to go right to the core of how democracy works or should work or could work. Because it ain't working. There's no democracy. Whether it's the gerrymandering or the money or the party systems. I mean, I'm talking big issues. We got to go big. We got to go big with reform. This is why I'm a lefty. That's why I'm not a centrist. It's happening right here in my own state of Wisconsin. Similarly, like McConnell, we've got the Speaker of the Assembly, Robin Vos, and the Wisconsin Republicans have finally offered a COVID relief package. And like their counterparts in Washington, it's straight out of bizarro world. Forces workers to go back into offices, forces teachers to go back into classrooms. And mostly it's all about power. It strips any kind of power from Wisconsin's Democratic governor, Tony Evers, and places virtually all decision-making in the hands of the Budget Committee. And just a reminder, as I've told you many times, Wisconsin is the poster child for gerrymandering. Republicans hold majorities in the Assembly and in the Senate, wide majorities, even though they receive far fewer votes in the state. But because of the way they got districts gerrymandered, they can finagle a majority every time. So once again, democracy nowhere to be seen. And they're only doubling and tripling down. Yeah, they want all decisions about COVID relief funding, even about vaccine distribution, everything, in the hands of the Budget Committee. Not even the whole state legislature. No, this one small committee. So here in Wisconsin, Robin Vos has everybody by the short hairs, just like in Washington, Mitch McConnell is exercising the same power. Yeah, democracy is broken. It's non-existent. It doesn't work. And then over on the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue, the Orange Menace just continues his rampage to the finish line. We find out now big surprise. There's been an ongoing investigation about bribery for pardons. No kidding. Anybody surprised by this? Well, it's been revealed. Now, there's a whole lot redacted. There's a whole lot we don't know. But we do know, because of an unsealed court ruling, that a bribe for pardon investigation has been underway for quite some time. Headlines from recent days also tell us that this PAC that Don Jr. and his buddies have set up have garnered $170 million so far from the deplorables, just reaching deep into their pockets for the Orange Menace. And the way they've got this PAC set up, their pitch, of course, is that, he didn't lose and we got to fight the fraud and Joe is stealing the election and help us hire more lawyers. That's the pitch. But of course, the money, all $170 million and counting, just basically goes into one slush fund that the Orange Menace can use pretty much however he wants. Not too many restrictions on how he can use the money. So he continues to collect money. We've also seen in recent headlines that Trump's debt looks to be well over $1 billion. So he's got to keep his grift going here. Yeah, I need to keep raking it in here. I can continue to dupe the deplorables like I've been doing all my life. They keep sending me checks. I can sell some pardons. But mostly, he says to himself, well, I got to keep the game going. I have to stay out front. I have to keep the cameras on me. That's my only source of revenue. So refuse to concede, play the whole fraud game, fire up the deplorables, keep them on board. There are rumors going around that he's going to have a big event on Inauguration Day. To counter-program the inauguration itself, he's going to announce his 2024 candidacy and keep that money flowing. He's got nothing else. All he has is money and ego to drag his fat carcass around the earth for as long as he has left. And then, I don't know, just for fun? Or just because he thinks his base will like it? He's just doing the weirdest, most grotesque, cruel things on every front, trying to sabotage the incoming administration. He's got his Treasury Secretary hiding billions of dollars in the CARES Act where Biden can't find it. He's racing to execute 5 more people before he leaves office. The first president in almost 20 years to invoke the federal death penalty, and now he wants to do it 5 more times in his final 7 weeks. And not only that, he'd like to do it by either electrocution or firing squad. His whole stand back and stand by message has been amplified exponentially over this bogus stolen election claim. And he's got the worst of the deplorables just absolutely fired up about so-called marching orders and a civil war if Joe Biden has the nerve and the gall to actually raise his right hand and take the oath of office. It may be 49 days to inauguration, but it's only 32 days to January 3rd. That's when the new Congress is sworn in. I say we impeach him before Inauguration Day. Toss him out on his ear. Perp walk the guy out. I don't care if it's the day before inauguration. Boot his fat ass out of the White House as soon as possible. God, if Mike Pence and the cabinet could have a come-to-Jesus moment, could look at the current situation for what it is and say, yes, we're all slime balls, but we're not this guy. Let's invoke the 25th Amendment and end this thing now. How much more harm can he do? I know it's a lot to ask for, but Jesus, they're human beings, aren't they? In this season of Ebenezer Scrooge, couldn't we hope, even though it seems incredible, hope for some tale of redemption here? And all of this while the pandemic rages on. We are in an active emergency situation on every front. The rejection of the Orange Menace in the election was a good thing, but our emergency situation remains active, dangerous, and more so every single day. from the virus itself, mercilessly taking out people by the thousands at a rate of 1 death per minute. In the 29 minutes you and I spent together today, 29 people will have died. The attending economic catastrophe happening before our eyes. Hunger, poverty, homelessness, joblessness, and nothing being done. Literally nothing being done. The outgoing Orange Menace fanning the flames of distrust, of violence. Mitch McConnell clutching onto his power. For what? I'm not sure. It appears to be just for the sake of the power itself. And none of this dreamt in the worst nightmares of the founders, who were suspicious of parties, who experienced the tyranny of King George III, and wanted to create a system that would never allow the return of such a tyrant. So they were never naive. They took precautions against the worst, but even they couldn't anticipate this. And the 200+ years since then, as good people have tried to perfect this union. Who could have dreamed of the likes of Mitch McConnell and the Orange Menace? Any and every right-thinking person in any position of power, legislators, lawmakers, you better forget about everything else between now and Inauguration Day and put your full efforts into stopping the Orange Menace and all the destruction he is hell-bent on bringing down, and to somehow, however you can do it, you got to maneuver around or somehow try to usurp the monumental power that one man, Mitch McConnell, holds in his slimy, frail little, never worked a day in my life hands. 32 days to a new Congress, 49 days to inauguration. A desperate nation is asking you to pull us out of this fire. All right. I see I've got a couple minutes left on the clock. Let me take this opportunity to remind you that this episode of The Log and all episodes can be found on your favorite podcast platform. We go out to the world. Remember also that The Log is just one of many titles. We've done a few different podcasts over the years. So Charles Burcell Presents is the umbrella term that you want to search for if you're looking for us for the first time. Under that banner falls not only The Log, but Stream of Consciousness Talk Radio Theater, a Conversations series I did a couple years ago, and some other really nice surprises, including Neo Radio. We found all the old tapes from the KPFA show and digitized all of those. So there's lots of good things to find. The website is even easier. You'll find everything there, charlesburcell.com. I don't do it enough, but I'd like to thank our flagship terrestrial station, Riverwest Radio, riverwestradio.com. Our theme music, composed and performed by Peter Donalds. And you can contact me anytime you want, charlesburcell@gmail, or Facebook or Twitter. All right, I think that takes care of everything, including the clock. I love you. I'll talk to you tomorrow.